Hello, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Hi, everybody. My name is Carrie Forbes. I'm the Dean of the Libraries here at SOU. Thank you for joining us tonight. This is the 30th anniversary of our William Stafford celebration that we have every January. So thus the wine for the celebration. Well, thank you. We are gathered here to honor the words and the spirit of Oregon's most beloved poet, William Stafford. And we are also very fortunate to have many talented poets and scholars here in our local community who will also be sharing some insights with you later on in the program as well. I just also wanted to say a few words about William Stafford being a poet who deeply understood the human condition and really valued nature. I know a lot of us are thinking tonight about the wildfires that are happening in California, and this is a community that is very familiar with the impact of wildfires. And so I hope this evening of poetry will be helpful in having some solace during these difficult times. To honor our connection to the land and to our community, we always read SOU's land acknowledgement statement as part of the opening of all of our events. So I'm going to read that for you right now. We want to take this moment to acknowledge that Southern Oregon University is located within the ancestral homelands of the Shasta, Tacoma, and Letgawa peoples who lived here since time immemorial. These tribes were displaced during rapid Euro-American colonization, the gold rush, and armed conflict between 1851 and 1856. In the 1850s, discovery of gold and settlement brought thousands of Euro-Americans to their lands, leading to warfare, epidemic, starvation, and villages being burned. In 1853, the first of several treaties were signed, confederating these tribes and others together, who would then be referred to as the Rogue River Tribe. These treaties ceded most of their homelands to the United States, and in return, they were guaranteed a permanent homeland reserved for them. At the end of the Rogue River Wars in 1856, these tribes and many other tribes from Western Oregon were removed to the Slats Reservation and the Grand Ronde Reservation. Today, the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde Community of Oregon and the Confederated Tribes of the Slats Indians are living descendants of the Tacoma, Shasta, and Letgawa peoples of this area. We encourage you to learn more about the land you reside on and to join us in advocating for the inherent sovereignty of Indigenous people. So thank you again for being here tonight to honor William Stafford's legacy and the 30th anniversary of this event. I would now like to introduce Amy Miller, who has tirelessly organized these events every year for us, and she will be our host for this evening in introducing the poets. So Amy?
Thank you. That was Carrie Forbes, and she didn't introduce herself.
I did.
Okay, she does all things Hannon Library, and she's the first person I wanted to thank for putting this on. Every year, she puts so much into doing this event. All of the wonderful food and the wine and everything that you see and all of the setup is all Carrie. Thanks for doing this every year. This is a new mic for us this year. Can everybody hear me all the way in back? Y'all good? Great. Okay, I also want to thank the Friends of Hannon Library, who this is part of their speaker series that goes on during the academic year every year. There's some information about that on the back of the program. And I especially want to, and we've got some literature over here, Carrie's pointing out. I also especially want to thank Ed Battistella, who I think is not here tonight because he's traveling on some wonderful thing.
He's at a linguistics conference.
He's at a linguistics conference, and that sounds like heaven, doesn't it? Okay. For some of us. And Tony Davis also we want to thank. And thank you to Alex Castro, who is our tech person. He does all of the help with Zoom and the audio. We're going to have a little video for you a little bit later. We depend a lot on Alex. Thank you to Alex. I also want to thank Ashland News and the Rogue Valley Times. They gave us some great publicity in the past couple of weeks. I think it brought a few more people in, and we love that. This event is being video recorded. We're required to tell you that. And there are audience members watching on Zoom. This is the camera here, right there. Hi, people on Zoom. Thank you for coming too. Glad we have a Zoom option for you. These annual William Stafford celebrations have been taking place all over Oregon since the mid-1990s. They were originally co-sponsored by the William Stafford Archives. They honor the birthday of William Stafford, which is January 17th. He was born in 1914, would have been 111. I always say that every year, but should be. Tonight is a special one, as Carrie mentioned, the 30th anniversary of this gathering here at Southern Oregon University. This event was originally organized in 1995 by Vince and Patty Wixon. Vince is right here, and he'll be speaking. We will not hold our applause for Vince. They organized and emceed this event for more than 20 of its 30 years. So this is really about them building this community over the years and keeping this thing going and keeping it interesting. As many of you know, Patty Wixon passed away in July of this year here in Ashland. We'll be talking more about her later, and tonight this event is dedicated to her. There's also a pretty nice bio about her on the back of the program, if you want to take a look. I always like to start the evening by talking a little bit about William Stafford and his legacy and why we do these celebrations every year, since there are usually a few people here who have never been here before, or maybe they just moved to Oregon and are checking this out and they don't know very much about William Stafford. He was a poet and a college professor. He taught at, it's Joan Peterson's phone. I have heard this before at other meetings. I recognize this. One time Joan was giving a reading and her phone rang from the audience. It turned out to be her phone.
Don't tell stories. Sorry, everybody.
So William Stafford taught at Lewis and Clark College in Portland. He was the United States Poet Laureate in 1970 and 1971. And he served as Oregon's Poet Laureate for 15 years from 1975 to 1990. That's a lot longer than they haven't served now. Now it's a 2-year term, 4 years occasionally. So that was a good long stint as State Poet Laureate. He traveled all over to teach workshops and give talks and readings. He died in 1993, but his influence is still strongly felt in the world of Oregon poetry. He taught and knew many people who are attending this event tonight, which is one of the special things about this event all over the state, really. So his legacy lives on in a lot of you, and you pass it on to the rest of us at events like this. A few days ago, I was asked by a reporter from the Rogue Valley Times about the significance of the 30th anniversary of this event. I mean, it's kind of arbitrary on one hand, but it made me think about, kind of what a deal that is that we've been doing this for 30 years. I mean, the significance is, wow, we're still here. We're still doing this. We still fill this room every year. I mean, this is a great crowd tonight. We get great crowds every night.
Last year, we had a snowstorm.
Last year we did have a snowstorm, so we had no crowd that night technically, and then we had to do it on Zoom. But anyway, even when we did it on Zoom, we figured that out. We did not miss a year during COVID, and we had good crowds on Zoom as well. So that says a lot about this event. It's an important milestone to a lot of people, this event. Stafford's poems, so he wrote about 20,000 poems in his lifetime, and he published more than 60 books. His poems speak to many aspects of our culture: conservation of the natural world, peaceful resistance to public figures making bad decisions, and also how we can strive to see the humanity in other people, especially people that we don't agree with. That was one of his hallmarks. So people have a lot of different reasons for being here. So thank you all for being here tonight and for helping us to do this for 30 years. So the way it's going to work tonight is we're going to begin with our 4 featured poets. And tonight they are Margaret Loken, Peter Yeager, Barry Vitkoff, and Diane Oberhansley. They will each read one poem by William Stafford and one of their own, and they'll talk a little bit about the connection between their two poems. I wanted to mention that Bill Golson was in our early publicity. Bill could not make it tonight, as it turned out. We want to thank Barry Vitkoff for taking that place, and we wish Bill all the best. After the featured poets, guest speaker Vince Wixon will be giving a presentation about the crafting of a particular Stafford poem, which I think you're going to find really interesting. You have a handout about that already. Then we're going to have the famous intermission, which is going to be about 10 or 15 minutes. We'll see how that goes. Lots of food. There's lots of wine. Please, I know Carrie would really like you to eat it all up and have at it. After the intermission, there will be a tribute to Patty Wixon. I'll do that. And then after that, we were going to have our open mic. And that to me is kind of the heart and soul of this event, really. This is where you all, people in the audience, can come up here and read a favorite poem by William Stafford. You will need to be in the room to read at the open mic. So folks on Zoom, we're sorry. We've tried a couple of years and the technology has not worked for us, for you all to read on Zoom. So it will just be the folks in the room who will be doing that. There is a sign-up sheet. Actually, there are two sign-up sheets. There's one going around, I think.
I think we put them together.
Okay, there's now one sign-up sheet. And I'm going to send this around. If you would just keep passing it and sign it, if you would like to read it, that'll be toward the end of the evening. You got lots of time. And then at the very end, we've got a special thing. We've got, because this is the 30th anniversary, we're doing this special thing because we thought it really wouldn't be complete without hearing from William Stafford himself. We all get to talk and we're going to let him talk for a little while. There will be a video provided by Vince Wixon. He'll let you know more about it later. It's of Stafford doing a reading. It runs about 12 minutes. And Vince tells me that Stafford gets through 11 poems in his 12 minutes. So he was a fast reader, it turns out, and probably not a lot of fluff in between. Short poems and not a lot of banter, I'm gonna guess. Okay, you are welcome to stay and watch the video at the end, or if you feel like you want to head out at that point, that's fine. So let's get started with our 4 featured poets. Our first featured poet is Margaret Loken. Margaret has taught English to high school students in Oregon, ESL to adults in California, Japan, and Spain, and academic writing at the University of California, San Diego. Her work has been published in the Jefferson Journal, in 2 chapbooks called North and South and Sundials, and her most recent book is Pictures I Didn't Take. Please welcome Margaret Loken.
Thank you. Good evening. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Quite a few years ago, I attended a workshop led by the poet Richard Hugo. And in typical workshop fashion, we all read a poem or two and waited for critique. And after I had read one of my poems, Hugo said, "That is so Stafford." And I smiled and I didn't know what he meant. And I was too timid to ask. But when I got home, I read some of Stafford's poems. And the one thread that seemed to go through both of our works was a love for the natural world. So I would like to read my So Stafford poem and then read one of his. And mine is called Elk Creek. Maybe those aren't good. Through brackish water into clear, beneath the gaze of beaver and muskrat, we paddle through blue sky. Ocean growl strains through cedar and fir, dissolving in our reflection. A logjam divides the creek where elk tracks lead away from drinking places. Over logs mossy and slick, we follow muddy holes made by sure hooves. Birds start at snapping twigs, then silence and our breathing. Sun shafts into a meadow where ivory butterflies waltz through sword fern. We lie on wet grass, dancing awkward rhythms. Above us, twin hemlocks loom, 10 arm spreads wide beside the creek. And this is from the man. It's called Walking West. Anyone with quiet pace who walks a gray road in the west may hear a badger underground, where in deep flint of another time is caught by flint and held forever. Anyone who listens walks on time that dogs him single file to mountains that are far from people, the face of the land gone gray like flint. Badgers dig their little lives there, quiet paced, the land lies gaunt. The railroad dies by a yellow depot, towns fall away toward a muddy creek. Badger gray, the sod goes under a river of wind, a hawk on a stick.
Our second featured poet tonight is Peter Yeager. Peter lives in Jacksonville, Oregon, with his wife and 2 Jack Russell Terriers. He has 2 daughters and 3 grandchildren, in addition to the Jack Russell Terriers. A New Jersey native, Peter holds degrees in English and law from Rutgers and has worked for government, nonprofits, and lawyers. In 1991 and 92, he house husbanded and homeschooled in Hungary. He loves choral singing, and in 2022, he published Searching for Sanctuary, The Journey Home, Poems 1975 to 2022. Please welcome Peter Yeager.
I hope I can manage this holding the mic. Got everything written. Good evening. I am honored to be here. Thank you, Amy Miller, for inviting me. Why are we here? What are we doing here? Even in Quiet Places, a posthumous collection of Stafford's poems, we find in the book 5 4-line stanzas and a 1-line closing stanza. The book and the spirit are capitalized in the book. A hand appears. It writes on the wall, just a hand moving in the air and writing on the wall. A voice comes and says the words, "You have been weighed. You have been judged and have failed." The hand disappears. The voice fades away into silence, and a spirit stirs and fills the room, all space, all things. All this in the book asks, what have you done wrong? But the spirit says, come to me who need comfort. And the hand, the wall, the voice are gone, but the spirit is everywhere. The story ends inside the book, but outside, wherever you are, it goes on. I began writing poems in the early 70s when I was in law school in New Jersey. In 1976, in Omaha, I interviewed poet Frederick Zedick from Washington State. He told me of poets he knew, including William Stafford. In 1992, I moved to Oregon. Early in 1993, while working at a law firm here in Ashland, I noticed Stafford was giving a poetry workshop here. I walked down Siskiyou Boulevard and found myself in the presence of a legend. Some of my notes on what he taught us. Torrent of things happening. Writer selects from the current. Selection, reflection, dawning realization. How to put the pieces together. Placement, sequencing, cadencing, tumble down the page. He showed us his handwritten journal entry, 26 December 1986. He told us how it became reading with little sister, a recollection. The stars have died overhead in their great cold. Beneath us, the sled whispers along. Back there, our mother is gone. They tell us, if you hold on, the dogs will take you home. And they tell us never to cry. We'll die too, they say, if we are ever afraid. All night, we hold on. The stars go down. We are never afraid. He said, note how it ends with 3 short sentences. How the kids tell each other, we are never afraid. Writing is full of surprises. Things happen as a result of things you set out to do. His journals often start with a dream. Later, working for a law firm in Medford, again I sought respite from the law and poetry. Undertow. 60-minute lunch hour. After the minutes used to consume my lunch, I walk down the street. Tick, 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 tick. To the library. Walk to the library. Timed to allow minutes to browse. Tick, 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 tick. The stacks, the poetry section. S, here he is, William Stafford. The poems. The poems. Lure me. Waves. Lapping. Swelling. Drawing me deep slowly to a place, no rules but the truth. Time flows as in a dream, endless as ocean, voices timeless as chords, chords of a choir of sirens. Tick, 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 tick. Time to go. Clock saves me from undertow, but oh, 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 how I longed to stay, to go. Then I started attending this gathering. One of my dreams is that people who have passed from our midst still hear us from heaven. So I wrote, does he hear? Does William Stafford hear and listen with his mix of mystery, humility, wisdom, and grace when we gather to remember and say the poems he gave us? In that timeless place, does he await this time of year to see what we found shuffling through all the leaves he left, give voice and ear to what he heard? Does he say in words more angelic than those he composed here below? Oh no, again. Or does he eavesdrop? Ah, yes, so kind of you. Or nod, yes, I agree, that's still true. Does he pray for us as a parent for a child, that we too will find our voices, listen, pay attention, say what we see, in words like wisps in the air, there for us to catch like dreams, for us to give gifts to those with ears to hear? Does he wait in a place where he and other saints and poets heaven revel in words like rivers that sing, dance, and tell stories? Always new, more complete than waves, obsolete, replacing themselves in the seas of our creations, while we stand on beaches, his words washing our feet. If you did not have something else to do, somewhere else to go, could you resist that undertow? Perhaps you have let it take you along. You did not drown, but wrote its song. It's what we have in common. What brings us here each passing year? Why are we here? To connect with each other over our common love of William Stafford and his poems. That's what we're doing here. And so we read poems, we write poems. We are not afraid. The spirit is everywhere. Wherever we are, it goes on.
Thank you, Peter. Our next reader is Barry Vitkoff. Barry lives here in Ashland with his wife and exceptionally brilliant standard poodle. There's a theme, there's a little competition going on here. He's had 3 books published by Finishing Line Press. One is Where I Live Some of the Time, which is poetry. Also the Wilbur Stories and More short stories, and a chapbook collection of poems called Structures. Finishing Line will be publishing his novella, The Boy with 6 Fingers, next month. Welcome, Barry Vitkoff.
I don't have anything to say about Jack Russell Terriers. My friend Peter will brag about that later on, I'm sure. I have to start with a little ad. There's a lot of poets in this room, and we have a wonderful online newspaper, the Ashland.News, on the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays of every month, publishes a poem or more in the poetry corner. We need poems. So go online, doesn't cost anything. The very bottom of each column are instructions on how to submit. So love to see some poems submitted. When Amy asked me to be part of this event, not only was I honored that she would ask, but I immediately knew what poem I wanted to read that I had written. But I'm far from being a Stafford scholar by any stretch of the imagination. We have Vince. We can look forward to Vince, and he'll teach us a lot. But I spent a lot of time online looking at a lot of YouTube videos of William Stafford reading poems, looking for something that would make some connection with what I had been struggling with. Because I had been struggling this last summer with the passing of a good friend and a cousin of mine. And I was trying to figure out how to deal with that. And what do you do when you go through that kind of a life change, that when you're affected by somebody's passing, somebody's death? I felt that I was in kind of a labyrinth, of an emotional labyrinth, trying to figure out how to get out of it. So, like Stafford, I turned to nature, and I found a poem for myself, and I started to look for a poem that William Stafford had written that might relate to that. And I found a poem that had nothing to do with nature. And in fact, it was connected to some lines from William Blake that Stafford described in one of the videos. I give you the end of a golden thread, only wind it into a ball. It will lead you in at heaven's gate, built in Jerusalem's wall. And he took that metaphor of a string and he wrote a wonderful poem, The Way It Is, which teaches us, I believe, that there's a thread that we follow in our lives. And it might be considered a values touchstone. That's kind of the way I look at it. Some might refer to it as the moral center, or others as a religious or spiritual guide. It's what we have inside of us that helps us to navigate our lives. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that today, on this National Day of Mourning for President Jimmy Carter, he exemplified having that string that he followed his entire life. So The Way It Is by William Stafford. There's a thread that you follow. It goes among the things that change, but it doesn't change. People wonder about what it is you are pursuing. You have to explain about the thread, but it is hard for others to see. While you hold it, you can't get lost. Tragedies happen, people get hurt or die, and you suffer and get old. Nothing you can do can stop time's unfolding. You don't ever let go of that thread. So the poem I wrote while I was vacationing at the Sea Ranch on the Sonoma-Mendocino coast. And it was shortly after and during the time that these deaths were occurring. And I was watching cormorants. I was staying at a house that was on a street called Cormorant Close. And right at the end of the close was a cliff with all these cormorants. And I would go out there every morning and afternoon, and sometimes early in the evening, and I'd watch the cormorants. And I thought, I think they're teaching me something about my thread, or about what it means to have a thread. And so I wrote this poem, The Cormorants Are Still Here. The cormorants are still here. They don't have names. I haven't given them names. It's been a year, but the cormorants are still here. She's not here anymore. She had a name, a presence, a place by the seashore. But she's not here anymore. They hear the hoarse grunting of cormorants, to see the spray of whitecaps, feel the fog surround her like a chilly ghost, smell the fishy salt in the air. But the cormorants are still here, leaping from cliffs without fear, extending wings, dipping, soaring, before diving, flashing, feeding. Even though she's no longer here, but the cormorants are still here. When we're no longer here, and our names no longer named, when we won't be here, walking along the bluffs, seeing the meadow grasses, away, sway in the coastal breeze, a red fox darting for prey, jackrabbits startled by our presence, the cormorants will still be here. Thank you.
It rolled by itself.
The room's on a tilt, it turns out. It tilts that way. Thank you, Barry. Our fourth featured poet tonight is Diane Oberhansley. Diane is a multi-genre writer, though her first love, she says, is poetry. Her book of short stories, A Brief History of Male Nudes in America, how is that for a title? Won the Flannery O'Connor Prize from the University of Georgia Press. And her co-written novel, Downwinders: An Atomic Tale, was a Utah Book of the Year. Her poems have appeared widely in literary journals, and her most recent book is The Madonna of Starbucks: Essays, Stories, and Poems Around Food. She lives here in Ashland, where she is a slow food enthusiast, an arts supporter and educator, and where she recently co-founded the Pacific Crest Writers, which is a new writers group here in town. If you are interested, I think you can talk to Diane about it a little later tonight. Welcome, Diane Oberhansley.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the invitation. I'm new here in Ashland, been here 2.5 years now. Love it. It's always thrilling to be in a room with this many poets and poetry lovers. That doesn't happen too often. In 1993, the U.S. Forest Service commissioned William Stafford to write 7 poems, which would accompany interpretive signs along the Methow River in north central Washington state. These were some of the last poems Stafford would write before his death later that year. The following poem is one of these, capturing his typical conversational, soft-spoken style, but reflecting a rare, heightened emotionality, I think, even bliss. Time for Serenity, anyone? By William Stafford. I like to live in the sound of water, in the feel of mountain air. A sharp reminder hits me. This world is still alive. It stretches out there, shivering toward its own creation. I'm part of it. Even my breathing enters into this elaborate give and take. This bowing to sun and moon, day or night, winter, summer, storm, still. This tranquil chaos that seems to be going somewhere. This wilderness with a great peacefulness in it. This motionless turmoil. This everything dance. That poem, along with so many of Stafford's, my poem, is a love poem. His was to the earth and nature, and mine is a little different, but very much a love poem as well. Regarding my friendship with Georgia O'Keeffe. I don't think we would have been friends. So unsmiling, driven, selfish, grudge-holding, one or both of us. But your cow skull with calico roses, the Jimson weed, the black iris with soft folds, which you insisted was not vaginal, they rushed me hot-blooded, walked me back again and again in the museum, made me turn and love you. Love the unsmiling, driven, grudge-holding woman, collector of rocks and bones and nervous breakdowns, lover of the empty places and sunsets. To dissect you from your calico roses, impossible, unwarranted. So my arms open wide to pull all of you in, the scattered blues, the veined petals, you who claim to hate flowers, but painted them because they were cheap and didn't move. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. So our guest speaker tonight is our special friend, Vince Wixon. Many of you know him already. In case you have not made his acquaintance, I'll say a little bit about him. Vince Wixon has published 4 collections of poems, most recently Laying By. He has co-edited 4 books by William Stafford, including 2 books on writing, which are called Crossing Unmarked Snow and The Answers Are in the Mountains. Both of those are from the University of Michigan Press. And Sound of the Axe, Aphorisms and Poems, which is a really wonderful little book if you've never picked it up, a really unusual book by Staffordisms. That is from Pit Poetry. He co-produced 2 videos on William Stafford, What the River Says and The Life of the Poem. In 2014, he and his wife Patty received the Stuart H. Holbrook Award for contributions to the literary life of Oregon. Welcome, Vince Wixon.
I may call you up here, Amy, to hold this mic. Thank you. And it's really great to see so many people here. It's really wonderful. Thanks so much for coming. I want to say something first about those CDs that are over there on the table. They're free of 2 Stafford readings, and please take them. I could take a vote about how many people still play CDs. I think this group would be above the national average, probably. So please take them. One is, and I don't have too many of those, of Stafford's last reading, which was at the Portland Poetry Festival 2 weeks before he died. It's a tremendous reading, really. And the other one that I have a lot of copies and still many in my garage, and I would love to get rid of those as well. It's called Every War Has Two Losers. William Stafford reads poems of reconciliation. It's a compilation that Patty put together based on the book that Kim Stafford edited of his father's work. Every War Has Two Losers, William Stafford on Peace and War. So please take those. I hope all of you have that handout or access to it. There are a few more copies here. I'll get to that in a little bit. In early November 1986, my video partner, Mike Marquis, our videographer, Jeff Hart, and I took a red eye from Portland to Wichita, then drove the 30 miles to El Dorado, Kansas, and it's El Dorado, by the way, for our first videotaping of William Stafford. We've been given a whopping $5,000 by the Oregon Arts Commission to make a film. And El Dorado is in the Flint Hills, about 100 miles from Stafford's birthplace, which is Hutchinson, Kansas. And it's really a beautiful spot. It's the largest tall grass prairie in North America. Remaining. And it's too rocky to plow, is part of the reasons. And grasses are predominantly blue stem, big blue stem, switchgrass, and Indian grass. So no wonder Stafford has so much wind in his poems, from Kansas, of course. Grass that was moving found all shades of brown, moved them along, flowed autumn away, galloping westward where summer had gone. First stanza of The Little Girl by the Fence at School that he'll read later in that video. And the next morning, we stumbled out of our motel room into dense fog, and we were concerned about whether we'd be able to videotape that day. We'd spent most of that $5,000 just getting to Kansas. And when we entered the motel cafe, Stafford was already in a booth drinking coffee. He said, "Where you fellas been? Best part of the day is over." But he knew he had gotten in late, and later the next day, we were able to film him in town and in the countryside near a farmhouse by the Walnut River. And you can see that footage and what the river says, mainly when he reads The Farm on the Great Plains. The next day, in his reading at Butler County Community College, where he'd studied in 1935 before attending the University of Kansas, he announced one poem with, "When I travel, I try to keep from being the kind of person who used to write and now travels. So I write. I'm down here in the motel yesterday morning waiting for my lazy friends to wake up so we can go have breakfast. I see this mirror." Then he read the poem that you have before you, but what he read actually is an earlier draft from the one you have, but it's fairly close. And we'll talk about that. I'll talk about that in a minute. Your life. You will walk toward the mirror closer and closer, then flow into the glass. You will disappear someday like that, being more real, more true at the last. You learn what you are slowly, a baby, a boy, a man, a self often shattered and pieces put together again till the end. You halt, the glass opens, a surface, an image, a past. So on your copy, what Stafford would call a documentary copy, You see written in by hand an important revision he made after he'd read it in Kansas. A baby, a boy, a man becomes a child, a woman, a man. So it's more inclusive, which is a typical Stafford move. And we'll take another look at this draft, his final, in a bit. The poem Your Life appeared in the 75th anniversary issue of Poetry in the fall of 1987, as he's written in the top left. If he had sent it to other places, those would be listed with the dates on the back of the sheet. And it was collected in his book, Passwords, 1991, and then chosen for the collection the way it is. So you can find it there. As you know, Stafford wrote every day early in the morning, whether he was at home in Lake Oswego or on the road. And when he read Your Life that afternoon, I pictured him in a motel room like the one we had, lying on his bed, curtains open to gray light, head propped on a pillow, gazing in the mirror, accepting, as usual, the materials at hand. Then he would begin writing with a pen on a spiral notebook, which he took on trips. When he was at home, he lay on the couch in the living room by the picture window and wrote with a fountain pen on loose sheets of unlined typing paper, usually yellow, which he saved in a flat box, the kind that you used to be able to buy typing paper like 100 sheets in, about yay thick. And he used the box as his writing board when he scrawled. And he usually wrote for about an hour, hour and a half, drafting and then working through the draft. So much of his revising was done during that early morning. And if he continued to find a draft interesting later in the day, he would type it up and he'd usually write copied on the draft, on the daily writing. So if you take a look at the other side, I hadn't read his writing for a while, so it took a little practice to. In 2014, his son Kim wrote an article on the 4 elements of his father's daily writings, and I've included the website of this on this page. You can see it down there, Kim Stafford, poet, and so on, if you want to read the entire article. First, Kim said, each page includes the date of the writing for Stafford's record keeping and acknowledging his arrival on the page. And the second thing, some prose notes, like recent experiences, dreams, as Peter said, many, many dreams in his daily writings. To keep the pen going and the mind engaged, but using memory. But on this one, he does not have a dream. So if you can figure it out, what he says is motel in El Dorado, Kansas. Then he writes, dinner last night at Lois and Joe Friesen's farm. Excuse me, also present, and then he lists some names of other people attending the dinner. Then he writes, here to make video, Vince Wixon, Mike Marquis, Jeff Hart. It still feels good being mentioned in Stafford's daily writing. That's why I'm presenting it tonight. My name's there. In his warm-up, even, you feel you're there close to the creation. Kim's third element, Stafford often wrote aphorisms, as has been mentioned tonight. There's not one here, but he often wrote them like some kind of commentary that expands daily life. Like, for example, I've read some before. What the locomotive says, the whole train does. Most people live lives that are too significant. You can compost newspapers. And he had a kind of mind that could produce aphorisms, but he practiced too. And he also was well read in Nietzsche and Pascal. So that was part of his interest in producing aphorisms. Paul Merchant and I, when we worked in the archives, typed up over 800 of them from his daily writings. So So then he finishes his prose notes. You can see, tomorrow I go to Bruce Cutler's in Wichita. Tom Averill is coming over today, so he's got that out of the way. Then there's an indentation, and he's into a poem. So the miracle of creation, but he would say simply, he was available to what came to him. He was prompted by the mirror and its reflection of him, and so he writes. I'll read my transcription because I can't hold both papers at once. Someone walks into the mirror closer and closer, then flows into glass. I will disappear someday like that, being more real, more true at the last. You learn what you are slowly, a baby, a boy, a man, a self often shattered, and the pieces put together till at last. In going over it again, he crossed out at last and put the end. Then you are where the glass opens, but he cut where, so it reads, he replaced R and so it reads now, you halt, the glass opens, if you can see that, it's written halt underneath. Only an image remains, cross that line out. A surface, an image, a past. You see that he also tried a door and crossed it out. Then he has, and a door for a soul. Well, even I know that's not very good. So that was cut out right away, I would guess. And then below that, he begins the next day, he starts the writing for the 8th of November. And I'm not going to read that, but if you skip down, the town comes back. It's in black and white. I mean, so he's still writing, I think, about Kansas. And then he goes on over onto the next page. So back to the copy on the other side. It's dated the day he drafted it, 7 November 86. I'm not sure what the 63 means, but he may have used it in putting together the book passwords. That may have been a number that he used for where he was placing that poem. I'm not sure about that. Besides making it more inclusive with a child, a woman, a man, he made some other changes after his daily writing. He settled on you, right, throughout, whereas the draft had someone and I in there as well. So he settled on you to try to draw the reader in, I think. He improved the rhythm. One line is second stanza, first line. You learn what you are, but slowly. I mean, that little insertion, I think, improves the rhythm. And of course, he made the ending resonate. A self often shattered and pieces put together till the end. You halt, the glass opens. A surface, an image, a past. What could be simpler, you might say? William Stafford didn't need to be in Kansas to write those lines. In fact, he once said that when a host in Pakistan asked him what he had written about that morning, he was too embarrassed to say he had written about the cracks in the ceiling of the room that he was in. So any ceiling or room would work for William Stafford's imagination. But being in one of his hometowns in Kansas had something to do with what he saw in the mirror that morning. But Kansas was his past and was still present for him. To end my part here, I'll update you on the Stafford biography that's underway and has been underway for about 3 years. And I've reported the last 3 years. I also have told you, but not everyone, that the biographer Steve Paul wrote 40 years or so for the Kansas City Star. And in retirement, he's written 2 biographies, one on a short span of Ernest Hemingway's life, when Hemingway was a cub reporter for the Kansas City Star before he went off to Italy to drive ambulances. The title is Hemingway at 18, the pivotal year that launched an American legend. And more recently, a highly regarded biography of Kansas City native Evan S. Cannell Jr., the novelist, writer, author of Mr. Bridge, Mrs. Bridge, and a really fine book on Custer called Son of the Morning Star. And Steve is current president of Biographers International Organization. And I should add that he is a big sports fan who cheers mainly for the Chiefs and the Royals, and he's an expert on Bob Dylan. So we have a lot to talk about besides William Stafford. He liked the new movie, by the way. He's authorized me to say that the Stafford biography is under serious consideration at Oregon State University Press, and he might have some good news on that later this month. He's in the midst of drafting chapter 13, but has already drafted, pending some small revisions and insertions, 4 later chapters, a total of 17, mostly done, and maybe 4 to go. But given other obligations he has, it could take the rest of this year, so publication 2016?
2026.
Yeah, thanks. 2026. I'm glad you said that. In a recent entry on his website, and I've included that on the sheet for you too, stevepaulkc.com, he writes about Stafford's aphoristic language he runs across and he copies them down. And one item is 2 lines from a poem in Stafford's book, A Glass Face in the Rain. Could there be a light so far that when you stop, you make a shadow forever? I'll read it again. Could there be a light so far that when you stop, you make a shadow forever? Steve writes that it's a likely candidate as an epigraph for the biography. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vince. So it's intermission time, and I wanted to tell you when we get back from the intermission, which will be 10 or 15 minutes, we'll give you a holler when we're ready to reconvene. When we come back, we will do the open mic. Anyone in the audience is welcome to read a poem by William Stafford. Again, for those who might have joined us a little bit late, folks on Zoom will not be able to read, but folks in the room are welcome to. The sign-up sheet is going to be right over here by the door if you want to sign up in the meantime. And time for intermission. We'll see you in 10 or 15. Oh, the bathrooms are down the hall and kind of to the left there. Before we start the open mic, I wanted to mention that tonight's program is dedicated to Patty Wixon, who passed away this past July. So Patty organized this event along with Vince for more than 20 years. They really got it going and made it what it is today.
We got tired though, Amy.
We got tired. Even after they bequeathed this project to me 8 years ago, in the project of retiring from a few literary things that they've been involved with for many years, Patty would always come to this event if she could, and she usually sat right around in there somewhere. I could always see her right there. On the back of the program is a bio that lists some of the literary programs Patty was involved with, including things like the Chautauqua Poets and Writers series in Ashland, if everybody remembers that.
Yeah.
Brought Pulitzer Prize winners and poets laureate, and they read at the high school and they gave workshops to teachers, and it was a multi-day event for those things. Vince and Patty were behind all of that. Also, Patty was involved with the Oregon Writing Project, the Friends of William Stafford, and the Stafford Archives, where she and Vince produced 97 CDs that produced recordings of Stafford's readings and other appearances. She was a worker. She got work done. She was also a teacher and a longtime school administrator. She also raised 6 kids. I don't know if you all knew that. She also sewed costumes in the Oregon Shakespeare Festival's costume shop. as a volunteer for about 20 years. And she could tell you all about beading and tiny little buttons and all the fasteners that you couldn't even see on the costumes. She had an encyclopedic knowledge of sewing also. She also lost her father when she was 12 years old. I met Patty 18 years ago. When she found out I was a poet, the first thing she said was, "You have to send me some poems for Jefferson Monthly," which she was the poetry editor for. I had never met an editor before who would say something like that to me without knowing who I was or whether my work was any good. It was unheard of. I came from San Francisco, where it was a much colder scene, you know, bigger but colder, and you would not hear that from an editor there. So, you know, she was welcoming and warm right from the get-go. That was Patty. We became good friends, and here are some things that I learned from her. She was just as generous and welcoming as that first impression in everything. She seemed delighted to see me every time I saw her, even like a random encounter at a store or something, just delighted. Although she was amazingly kind, she was also pretty pushy. Surprisingly pushy. Like if she had some sort of project going on and she'd hired you to help out, you know, you had some project, some part of it, and you were running late or, you know, whatever, you were dragging your heels, she would remind you like many, many times until it got done. It was kind of a running joke with another friend of mine who she and I did a lot of stuff with Patty, and we were like, "Ooh, I'm getting the Patty push again here." She was also really good at setting boundaries. When she was involved with something she didn't want to be involved with, she'd find a way to get out of it. She was pretty good at that. She was graceful about it, but she got herself out. She didn't do things that she didn't want to do. Vince and I have been working on a couple of Patty's books over the past few months. There is Raku, which is the book that Patty was working on when she died. And before she passed away, she asked Vince to finish it for her, finish the editing and the sequencing. So we worked on that. And just recently, we've been doing a reprint of an earlier book, Dear Spoon, which is a very popular book of poetry and wonderful recipes, wonderful poetry and wonderful recipes. And we are reissuing that so that's much easier for people to find it. You'll be able to get it on Amazon. It went out of print with the previous publisher. And working on these books has been like having more conversations with Patty. It's kind of like sitting at her kitchen table and talking with her again. And that's been such a joy, and I have missed that so much. When we talked, she always made me feel loved, and she always made me feel seen. We miss Patty, and this gathering is one of the many ways we will remember her. So next up is our open mic. Let's see what we got here. Up with 2 sign-up sheets. Okay, perfect. We have 9 people on the open mic. That is good. So we're going to get the heave-ho signal at 8:45, but it's just going to be an announcement. If you hear the thing coming on saying Hannon Library is about to close, it means we have 15 minutes, right? We're scared. Is that right? Okay. Yeah. I think we'll be good with 9 people, and we'll also, so let's just keep it speedy because we do have a video at the end that will be 12 minutes, folks. Our first reader is Roy Scarborough.
Let's see, I'm left-handed, so I'll hold it. Okay. And fumble with my glasses. What I'm going to do is read some really short lines from William Stafford. We've already heard the full poem of The Way It Is, but I'm going to treat that as a poem, just the title, and then the epigram. Okay, so I'll read it like this. Title, 1 line. The Way It Is. Epigram to The Way It Is. My dreams feel right. They got away, but leave a sense of yes. That's the way it is. First poem, 2 lines. Indian caves in the dry country. There are some canyons we might use again sometime. The poem, yes, just 9 lines. It could happen anytime. Tornado, earthquake, Armageddon. It could happen. Or sunshine, love, salvation. It could, you know. That's why we'll wake and look out, no guarantees in this life. But some bonuses, like morning, like right now, like noon, like evening. And finally, as a afterwards, the Klamath people always said, there is a river we could use sometime. The old dams are gone now, finally. Iron Gate, Copco, Boyle, 1, 2, 3. White man's names for a trinity of concrete things. The Klamath now wait for the Salmon people's return. On that hour, they gather and say, there's 1, yes, and 2, and 3. So yes, we always said so, and dreamt so. So yes, yes, we say yes, just like 1, 2, 3. That's the way it is. If you get a chance, look up the poem. Yes, it's in the same volume. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roy. Next up is David Hoffman.
Thank you. Thank you, Vince. Thank you, poets that read. 10 years ago, I was invited to read at this event. And I just really felt the need to be back. And I'm glad to be here and just be in this room with so many poets. Ask Me by William Stafford. Sometime when the river is ice, ask me mistakes I have made. Ask me whether what I have done is my life. Others have come in their slow way into my thought. And some have tried to help or to hurt. Ask me what difference their strongest love or hate has made. I will listen to what you say. You and I can turn and look at the river and wait. We know the current is there, hidden, and there are comings and goings from miles away that hold the stillness exactly before us. What the river says, that is what I say. Thank you.
Thank you, David. The next reader is Dan Kaufman.
Thank you, Amy. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Because we're in the Hannon Library, I decided to share with you a Stafford poem that's called An Afternoon in the Stacks. This is from Passwords, published in 1991, and I got it from Crossing Unmarked Snow, which Vince co-edited. So this is An Afternoon in the Stacks. Closing the book, I find I have left my head inside. It is dark in here, but the chapters open their beautiful spaces, and with a rustling sound, the words adjusting themselves to their meanings. Long passages on successive pages. An echo, continuous from the title onward, hums behind me. From in here, the world looms, a jungle redeemed by these linked sentences, carved out with where an author traveled and where a reader kept the way open. When the book ends, I will pull it inside out like a sock and throw it back into the library. But the rumor of it will haunt all the days that follow in my life. A candle flame in Tibet leans when I move.
Thank you, Dan. Next up is Bill Street.
Hi. I'd like to read a poem by Patty Whitson. This poem is for all the daughters in the audience and all the fathers. And I think it has some good advice for you. By the time I was 11, my father had taught me to thread a 3-pound leader through the eye of a dry fly. The number of loops to tie, how to cast to where the trout hit, to set the hook and work the line to the land, then to clean. Insert the tip of the knife for the one stroke cut from tail to gill. My sister squealing, "I want to take the guts out." Then I'd wash the rainbow skin until it sparkled like mica. For my 12th birthday, Father bought me a bottle of cologne, a word I didn't know. He said, "Now you're almost a woman, so you should have a special gift." For years, I would dab a few drops behind my ears and my sister's before church. In late May, I came home from 6th grade baseball practice, ponytail tangled, dirt smeared on my face from wiping off sweat with my arms. Father said, "You aren't taking care of how you look. In case you aren't a pretty woman, you must develop a personality." I asked, "What's a personality?" He seemed without words. He shook his head and he said, "Oh, you know what that is." That July, he died. And I had to figure it out for myself.
Thank you, Bill. That's one of my favorites too. Our next reader is Carl Pryor.
Rena couldn't make it. So.
Surprise appearance. Carl's wife, Rena, is the librarian at the Jacksonville Library. Good friend of mine.
Tony back.
Yes, I think we're
Okay.
Zoom and everything.
All right. Well, two quick things as context before I read the Stafford poem. One is that I'm a recently retired educator, 25 years in the Ashland School District, and it's so wonderful to see many of my former colleagues here in the room, including two mentors of mine, Vince Wixon, who really helped me with poetry and teaching poetry to students, and then also Bill Street. It's a pleasure to be here with them. And for 25 years, I struggled to introduce poems and poets to 11 to 14-year-olds, poets who weren't named Silverstein or Seuss. For me, William Stafford provided the kind of imagery and language that I thought my students could really relate to. And then secondly, and I think Barry Vickhouse touched on this as well, on this day where we remember a former president who's known for his humility and steadfastness. I think this poem of Stafford's highlights that he understood those things very well as well. And the poem's called At the Unnational Monument Along the Canadian Border. This is the field where the battle did not happen, where the unknown soldier did not die. This is the field where grass joined hands, where no monument stands, and the only heroic thing is the sky. Birds fly here without any sound, unfolding their wings across the open. No people killed or were killed on this ground, hallowed by neglect and an air so tame that people celebrate it by forgetting its name. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Our next reader will be closing. Perfect timing.
Remember the circulation desk.
Okay, we've been warned. Elizabeth Anderson is our next reader. She bailed, didn't she? Oh, sorry.
I thought we'd run out of time.
We have 15 more minutes, so.
But there's the film.
There's that. We have 3 more minutes.
Okay, well, this is a short poem, and into this evening of comfort and those who have been together so often, I have to admit that this poem is more of a challenge, and I hope it's okay with you. It's a ritual to read to each other. If you don't know the kind of person I am, and I don't know the kind of person you are, a pattern that others made may prevail in the world. And following the wrong God home, we may miss our star. For there is many a small betrayal in the mind, a shrug that lets the fragile sequence break, sending with shouts the horrible errors of childhood storming out to play through the broken dike. And as elephants parade, holding each other's tail, but if one wanders, the circus won't find the park. I call it cruel, and maybe the root of all cruelty, to know what occurs but not recognize the fact. And so I appeal to a voice, to something shadowy, a remote, important region in all who talk. Though we could fool each other, we should consider lest the parade of our mutual life get lost in the dark. For it is important that awake people be awake, or a breaking line may discourage them back to sleep. The signals we give, yes or no or maybe, should be clear. The darkness around us is deep.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Our next reader is Nathaniel Brain.
Hi, this is atavism. Sometimes in the open you look up where birds go by or just nothing and wait. A dim feeling comes, you were like this once. There was air and quiet. It was by a lake or maybe a river. You were alert as an otter and were suddenly born like the evening star into wide still worlds like this one you have found again for a moment in the open. Something is being told in the woods. Aisles of shadow lead away. A branch waves. A pencil of sunlight slowly travels its path. A withheld presence almost speaks, but then retreats, rustles a patch of brush. You can feel the centuries ripple, generations of wandering, discovering, being lost and found, eating, dying, being born. A walk through the forest strokes your fur, the fur you no longer have. And your gaze down a forest aisle is a strange long plunge, dark eyes looking for home. For delicious minutes, you can feel your whiskers, wider than your mind, a way out over everything.
Thank you, Nathaniel. Our final reader is Steve Diefenbacher.
Time is running short. There'll be no prelude. But okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just going to go and read this. And I was just flipping through this book today. And it's interesting how with so many of Stafford's poems, so this is a prelude, I guess. I can open a book though some days and there's something that directly relates to my life. So this one hit the spot. Ceremony. On the third finger of my left hand, under the bank of the Dineshka, a muskrat whirled and bit to the bone. The mangled hand made the water red. That was something the ocean would remember. I saw me in the current flowing through the land, rolling, touching roots, the world incarnadined, and the river richer by a kind of marriage. While in the woods an owl started quavering, with drops like tears, I raised my arm. Under the bank, a muskrat was trembling, with meaning my hand would wear forever. In that river, my blood flowed on.
Thank you, Steve. So Mitchell's going to say a few words about the video. Where do like steel doors come down at 9 o'clock or something like that?
No,
Okay.
it'll be okay.
Okay. Got a little AV stuff going.
Alex can get it going. I'm just gonna say, it's a, thanks. Yeah, it's short, but he reads 11 poems, but you know, we run out of time, he'll still be there. This is a reading at the Library of Congress in March 1987 as part of the 50th anniversary celebration of the consultantship in poetry and the selection of Robert Penn Warren as the first U.S. Poet Laureate. I didn't want the night to end without hearing Stafford's voice. And we'll hear him in a second. He's going to get up. He's between, not Alice Malloy. There. He's sitting between former consultants, Reed Whittemore and Stephen Spender. What we got there.
Sometime when the river is ice, ask me mistakes I've made. Ask me whether what I have done is my life. Others have come their slow way into my thought, and some have tried to help or to hurt. Ask me what difference their strongest love or hate has made. I will listen to what you say. You and I can turn and look at the silent river and wait. We know the current is there hidden, and there are comings and goings from miles away that hold the stillness exactly before us. What the river says, that is what I say. This is the hand I dipped in the Missouri above Council Bluffs and found the springs. All through the days of my life, I escort this hand. Where would the river meet a kinder friend? On top of Fort Rock in the sun, I spread these fingers to hold the world in the wind. Along that cliff, in that old cave where men used to live, I grubbed in the dirt for those cool springs again. Summits in the Rockies received this diplomat. Brush that concealed the lost children yielded them to this hand. Even on that last morning when we all tremble and lose, I will reach carefully, eagerly through that rain at the end toward whatever is there with this loyal hand. Some of these, the title doesn't make much difference. So I just went ahead. That was called Witness. I think this title makes a difference. It's called At the Unnational Monument Along the Canadian Border. This is the field where the battle did not happen, where the unknown soldier did not die. This is the field where grass joined hands, where no monument stands, and the only heroic thing is the sky. Birds fly here without any sound, unfolding their wings across the open. No people killed or were killed on this ground, hallowed by neglect, and an air so tame that people celebrate it by forgetting its name. Some of the cars are yellow that go by. Those you look at, so glimmering when light glances at their passing. Think of that hope. Someone will like me, maybe. The tan ones don't care. The blue who made a mistake. The white haven't tried. But the yellow, you turn your head. Hope lasts a long time if you're happy. This is called The Little Girl by the Fence at School. Grass that was moving, found all shades of brown, moved them along, flowed autumn away, galloping southward where summer had gone. And that was the morning someone's heart stopped and all became still. A girl said, "Forever?" And the grass, "Yes, forever." While the sky, One time, when evening had flowed between houses and paused on the school ground, I met Hillary's blind little sister following the gray, smooth railing, still warm from the sun, with her hand. And she stood by the edge, holding her face upward, waiting, while the last light found her cheek and her hair, and then on over the trees. You could hear the great sprinkler arm of water find and then leave the pavement, and pigeons telling each other their dreams or the dreams they would have. We were deep in the well of shadow by then, and I held out my hand saying, "Tina, it's me. Hillary says I should tell you it's dark." And oh, Tina, it is. Together now. And I reached, our hands touched, and we found our way home. I come from far for this gathering, and I'm glad to have the chance. I think about it when I look at this poem. It just goes, the title goes right into it. So I bring you this message from far away. Once in the 40s, we were alone one night on a long road in Montana. This was in winter, a big night, far to the stars. We had hitched, my wife and I, and left our ride at a crossing to go on. Tired and cold, but brave, we trudged along. This, we said, was our life, watched over, allowed to go where we wanted. We said we'd come back sometime when we got rich. We'd leave the others and find a night like this, whatever we had to give, and no matter how far, to be so happy again.
There's the library.
Putting poems together for this occasion was, like others, I had second thoughts, but I tried to make a little mix. And I think I found the ideal form for a poem, this one. I mean, ideal for a person like me. If you think of something, you could write it down. And if you thought of something else, you could also write it down. If you were sorry you'd written it down, just erase it. But it's just an aggregation of things. It's called Things I Learned Last Week. Ants, when they meet each other, usually pass on the right. Sometimes you can open a sticky door with your elbow. A man in Boston has dedicated himself to telling about injustice. For $3,000, he will come to your town and tell you about it. Schopenhauer was a pessimist, but he played the flute. Yeats, Pound, and Eliot saw art as growing from other art. They studied that. If I ever die, I'd like it to be in the evening. That way I'll have all the dark to go with me, and no one will see how I begin to hobble along. In the Pentagon, one person's job is to take pins out of towns, hills, and fields, and then save the pins for later. Well, this is called First Grade. In the play, Amy didn't want to be anybody, so she managed the curtain. Sharon wanted to be Amy, but Sam wouldn't let anybody be anybody else. He said it was wrong. All right, Steve said, I'll be me, but I don't like it. So Amy was Amy, and we didn't have the play, and Sharon cried. Two more. Once when the waves were talking, one said, I'll never be back. And then the rest ran on toward shore, but that one went forth so far it's never been seen again. When you walk along sometimes, you think of that absent wave, and of all that doesn't exist anymore, things of the other years. They'll never be back, you say. You stop and look out. It's already tomorrow somewhere, and someone like you is walking. A wave is beginning to speak, and the rest shrug and go on. You stand and care. Much has never existed, you know. You think of things to say. The waves come in. Wherever you walk, you see a place for that wave, but it isn't there. I'll end with St. Matthew and all. Laureen, we thought she'd come home, but it got late, then days. Now it has been years. Why shouldn't she if she wanted? I would. Something comes along, a sunny day, you start walking. You meet a person who says, follow me, and things lead on. Usually it wouldn't happen, but sometimes the neighbors notice your car is gone, the patch of oil in the driveway, and it fades. They forget. In the Bible, it happened. Fishermen, Levites, they just went away and kept going. Thomas away off in India never came back. But Laureen, it was a stranger maybe, and he said, your life, I need it, and nobody else did.
Thank you, everybody. I want to thank Carrie Forbes again and Alex Castro right here. There's Alex, our star, Alex star. Thank you to people watching on Zoom, and thank you everyone for coming and making this a really wonderful 30th anniversary. Safe drive home. Come again next year. Thanks for coming.